ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for director Gus Van Sant. All right, so the play's the thing, Austin. How did the screenplay come about? How did you find the story? What was your point of connection with it?
Yeah, it was kind of during the height of the pandemic in 2020, confined in my little place, and was actively looking for something to write on spec to try and get made by a bigger director. And I heard on a podcast the story of Tony Kritzis taking his mortgage president, company owner, hostage by way of Dead Man's Wire, and found this archival footage on YouTube of Tony marching Richard down the street, slipping on the ice and cracking these jokes, these off-color jokes to these police officers and asking for like a sip of water and drinking it like a baby bird. I keep going back to it's like the imagery that really stuck with me. And yeah, I started doing a ton of research, got in touch with the foremost historians on the matter, Alan Berry and Mark Enochs, who were in Indianapolis and had interviewed a lot of people connected to the case. Obviously, I wasn't around in '77 and in Indiana, and they really opened their books and let me kind of do a deep dive on the subject, and then obviously try to sprinkle in my own rage and humor from that era and point in time in my life into a spec script. Honestly, like the dream scenario is like to get it in the hands of Gus Van Sant.
The dreams come true. And by the way, I mean, in terms of like the tone, we'll get into just this balance of humor and suspense and everything. But Gus, when you first read the screenplay, what was it that struck you? What were the things that jumped out at you? What were you looking for as a director when you were reading the screenplay?
Well, I had been told by Casting Elways that they were going to shoot in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a town I was born in. And so I kind of wanted to go back and just check it out. I had been back a couple times for the Kentucky Derby. So that sort of got me going. And then looking at the screenplay on my computer, fortunately it was a computer, Austin had put these hyperlink moments in it in blue, that if you clicked on them, you would hear actual scenes that he was writing about. So you would hear the real Tony during the 911 call in the beginning, and he just sounded like this insane person, which was the thing that really caught me.
When Gus when you came on, how much further did the screenplay evolve after conversations that you had to get it to the point where you were ready to shoot the movie that we just saw?
Starting.
That's for you.
Well, it's funny. Like in some ways, we went back almost to the first draft when Gus came on board. I had done a decent amount of revisions prior to that, but then I think when I saw the script that was being circulated with Gus and Bill attached, it was close to the first submission draft that had those hyperlinks.
You decided which draft we should do.
I didn't. You did. I'm assuming.
Well, I only saw one draft, so.
Well, you asked at one point for I got permission to use those other drafts, but it was so close. I mean, that was like December. Like you were already scouting and building.
Cassian had sent me, the producer, Cassian Elways, had sent me a draft. So.
Yeah, the first draft had like a decent amount of these hyperlink moments. Like if I had written the action dialogue of that, like he slips on the ice or like a car gets distracted and hits a snowbank, I included the timestamp hyperlink so that you could click it and see the archival footage on YouTube, that I wasn't just like bullshitting. Like, that was actual moments in the crime that was like live on the airways. And I think there was a draft that started like to go out that didn't have those hyperlinks. It was a little more condensed. There's inconspicuously like 8 pages missing, and I was like, who cut these scenes? But anyways, they basically tasked me mainly with the ML Hall character. It was like kind of the main rewrites going into production. And then once we landed, obviously there's like a certain ending that involved more of like a a basketball stadium, like a Pacers game, reacting in real time to the verdict, and certain, things with the budget meant we'd have to improvise a little bit and change on the day. So there's a few changes there, but I guess mainly was your conversations with Mr. Pacino was what my main rewrite was.
Yeah, there was some, like sort of a talk about like some of the aspects of that scene with ML Hall that we read through it, and then you were at the readings, and then there were some suggestions of like what to do, and then you did a new draft.
Yeah, I think the first draft only had Richard and ML speaking on the phone, which is historically accurate. I don't think ML and Tony ever did speak on the phone during this event. But it was true that ML didn't apologize. He did refuse to apologize on the recorded line, which I found so fascinating. And then, Al wanted Tony and ML to speak to one another. So then I did my homework. I read Al Pacino's memoir, Sonny Boy, that just came out.
I think it was just that that was one of the things that could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Al's request. It was like, what could we do? And that could have been one of the things, which I don't think happened in reality, right?
No.
So how much time passed between the time that you came on, Gus, to the time that you had to start principal photography?
Well, I met Cassian at the Soho House it was like September 13th or something, and he was planning to shoot November 1st.
Not a lot of time.
So that's the way we were going ahead, and then that quickly got changed because Bill couldn't do it right at that point, so we were aiming for December 13th, which gave us breathing room a little bit. But I was sort of up for going like right away. And then ultimately, like we sort of started December 31st and then went into January.
So speaking of Bill, that is, of course, is Bill Skarsgård. Can we give it up for Bill Skarsgård? I mean, what a performance. I'm watching the film going like, are you kidding me? This guy's amazing. How did you come to cast Bill? What made him perfect? And also Dacre, you have an amazing cast. How did that all come together?
It was just sort of, I had been trying to get Bill Skarsgård in a few different projects, sometimes as like just an ancillary character. And so there was a little bit of communication about like, would you do this? And he would go like, well, if I'm not working, yeah, sure. That kind of thing. And so I had him in mind for other projects. Dacre was, and when it came to this project, I thought, well, could he do this? And would this be, he's sort of a man of many faces. Could he morph into this character? Which I thought about, and then who would be Richard Hall? Dacre was well known in where I was through an audition tape that was online for Stranger Things, which was a scene from Stand By Me, that he was, I guess, that TV show asked him to do that, Stand By Me scene, which was a famous kind of thing, and I thought I could get that guy to play Richard would be interesting, and so I just went to casting with those two guys. They both said yes, and we...
Watching the film, look, just the movie that sort of came to mind, watching it, of course, is Dog Day Afternoon, in terms of the tone, obviously, gritty 70s movie, but also, he's in this film. How did he come on board? Because that's pretty good.
Well, both Coleman and Coleman and Al were both through, I think, in one case, with Al's case, one of the investors knew Al, and Cassian had met Al a few times, so it was a sort of simple question, could he do like a one-day shoot, where we could shoot all the scenes in one day? And then similar to that was Coleman Domingo was making a film with Cassian Elwes about a singer, and he heard about this project, he heard about Dead Man's Wire, and he really wanted to do something on it, and there was this part, the DJ part, and we were sort of going through a lot of different requests, for that part. So he said that he would do it over like a couple days.
You know, the casting, every character, I mean, it truly is an ensemble, and the parts, no matter how big or small, you know, everybody's voice is so fully realized. I'm just curious of when the casting really came together, Austin. How did that help the screenplay evolve further, if at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of building off of Coleman's casting, that changed the character some. The real Fred Heckman was this kind of Walter Cronkite, kind of late 50s white guy. And I think by nature, when you get Coleman Domingo, you do everything you can to tailor that character to him. And what Gus did was share with Coleman and I both these archival radio recordings of DJ William Roscoe Mercer in New York, and who spoke with this kind of beat poet, like very sultry tone, and would speak about the soul and the spirit amidst like the Diodato and things like that. So it definitely veered the character more into a DJ than like a newscaster, and I think that was something that really elevated the project and that character.
You know, with all the films that you've directed over these years, Gus, what were the unique challenges you faced as a director on Dead Man's Wire that you didn't experience on your previous films?
Well, each film kind of, for me, it starts out as a completely new idea, and I'm wanting to like do something that hasn't ever been done just by me, not necessarily by anybody else, but you know, something that I hadn't experienced. And so stylistically, it's sort of created by hiring Arnaud Poitier, was our French DP. Some things that he had shot with me, a commercial that he shot, and some other things that he was well known for, were kind of indications of what it might look like. And I was sort of also giving him like complete freedom to do whatever he wanted, so that we could rehearse the scene and then just send in the DP and just go have a cup of coffee and then see what happened like later, which was kind of hard because after a while I would go in there and start demanding certain shots. But I was trying to let go of it. And then editorially with Sar Klein, same thing. He sort of like did his thing. We were renting an editing bay from Hank Corwin, who was a well-known editor, and at a friends and family screening where we were sort of first showing it, Hank said, you should just leave it like it is, because if you go back in there, it's so like split up already that like you're gonna have to like take 6 months to like go through it, so you could just play it like it is. And so we did.
That screening, how did that inform? I mean, you talked about leaving it the way it is. The reason I'm bringing that up is because there is such a great balance in the film between genuine suspense and humor. How much of that came out of the first cut? How much of that came out of the screenplay? How much of that came out of the editing that Sar Klein did?
I think, speaking for just the original story had built into it a guy who had a gun to his head the whole time. So as you're first sort of imagining it, there's a tension that I subsequently lost during the shoot because I was so used to the whole situation that I didn't know. But I think for an audience, for seeing it, you don't know what's going to happen. So there's a tension from that fact, which was maintained in the screenplay by Austin. What else I could talk about?
You take it from there.
Yeah, and to speak on the other side of the coin with the dark comedy of it, I think dark comedy and a thriller or a horror movie has a similar rhythm or cadence, like a ratcheting up of tension and then releasing that pressure valve with like a darkly comedic beat. And I think all the footage I had seen was rich with that. So you had said, I saw you did an interview at the AFI Fest, and you said something. You were like, "Yeah, I think the screenwriter hid jokes in there," which is like the coolest compliment you could ever hear for one of your heroes.
Yeah, I didn't see the humor exactly. I saw that there were indications of like funny things, But it wasn't until we had an audience that I realized, oh, I see, it's like a whole comedy.
It is.
Something I did not know.
It is rewarding. I will say. I mean, I come from like a Funny or Die. I work with Funny or Die and Comedy Central and Almost Friday TV. So like, but sketch comedy is my background. But I think Gus exhibits kind of like a Kubrickian style of satire, where like Stanley Kubrick would always say when doing like the Doctor Strangelove, like he wasn't necessarily letting every actor on the cast know what he was doing with it, or every department head, like the props person, if they thought it was a comedy, they'd be bringing like big zany props and stuff. So I think it worked in the film's benefit that a lot of the producing team and some of the actors like just viewed it as a straight thriller, and I did feel like I got to fly under the radar with the darkly comedic beats in a way that sells it a little more than if I leaned into it.
And Bill was like throwing all kinds of
Yes, Bill understood the assignment right away, because Bill found Tony in the same way that I did, as just a deeply charismatic figure. Like he was just magnetic to watch. I mean, the real guy was, as you saw in the footage, was like maybe like 5'5". Bill, different height, different age, but I think what Bill tapped into was that kind of the manic nature of his eyes and his like desperation to want to be heard and respected, and how quickly he could be ingratiated by someone if they gave him like the smallest of compliments. He's like ready to pull the trigger and like, you know, fire and brimstone, and then someone's like, "Hey Tony, you're looking good." He's like, "Thank you." "Hey, thank you." "Yeah, thank you, man."
But you know, there's also this moral ambiguity on both their, you know, Diggers and Bill's sides that I feel like, you know, you did a great job of keeping that balance all the way through. Like at no point during the movie do you want like Dacre to really get his head blown off, and at no point during the movie you're thinking like, man, I really hope they catch this guy, you know, or whatever. Like you really maintain that moral ambiguity all the way through. Talk about like how important that was for the film.
Yeah, I think the lightning rod of Tony is what drew me into the case, but then in writing it and spending time alone in my room, and then in this, you know, version of the room in my head with these guys, it was, you know, finding a deep empathy for Richard Hall in a way that, you know, I had a chip on my shoulder at times, like going to like film school, seeing kids who come from a different socioeconomic background. I'd be like, "Oh, this fucking rich kid." But then you work with them, you realize like, oh, they didn't ask to be born into that family any more than I got asked to be born into mine. And that is like one of the core themes, I think, of the film. And what I think Gus and our actors pull off is like the magic trick of, if you go in based off the trailer rooting for one side of the shotgun, you maybe come out of it with a little more understanding and empathy for the person on the other end.
Absolutely. And the other thing is just how I love the way the film matches like archival interviews, archival news footage with new footage shot looking like it is archival. So, and plus the split screens, you got photos in black and white. How did you like put that all together? What was your collaboration, Gus, with your editor, Sarkine, but also your cinematographer?
Yeah, like Arnaud, our French DP, was like right away wanting to find the period cameras that would still work, and there was a place that would rent them to us. They were from 1977. So we had two of those that were, whenever we were in a situation where there could have been news cameras, those were always running. We used, you know, sometimes one camera, but up to 3 cameras in a regular scene. Some were, you know, handled by like handheld, or else occasionally. I remember one time, one scene, there was just a tripod with a camera on it, just still by itself. Nobody was manning it. So we ended up with a lot of footage, and SAR was cutting. I suggested I was going to use still frames from the scene, but then we also had location photography, which was quite good. So we started using, and that was black and white, so we started using that. And then throwing in, SAR on his own started throwing in the documentary footage that was real from the source, we had a few different sources where we got it. There was an actual finished film, which I still haven't seen yet, but it also was coming from like things that were available from news stations in the area in Indiana, and so he was kind of throwing that in as well.
So Austin, this is your first produced screenplay. Is that right? Big congrats, first of all. Also, what was it like for you when you saw the final cut of the movie?
The final cut. I guess that would be Venice, right? I think that was, yeah, I had seen some like early, like that kind of, or very early, yeah, you had like basically 5 weeks from when we wrapped, you like showed that cut at WME. And then...
He was worried.
I sent notes.
I was also worried.
No, I mean, I did a Q&A with Leonard Maltin at the Coronado Film Festival, and he was like, it's about giving up your baby. How was that? And I was like, it was hard. It's a hard thing to do. But there's no better, I guess, adoptive parent than Gus Van Sant in that he was so welcoming on set to let me be there and soak up the experience of you bringing this to life. And yeah, it was a great time in Louisville, and also, if you guys noticed in the credit, I get an art PA credit, which is really cool, because my friend Sydney Marquez, who was hired as our set decorator, is like my longtime production designer. We've known each other for like over maybe 13 years now, and she's just happened to be hired on her own, merit on this, and it was like, hey, I think your script is the thing I'm working on. Like, that's great. So whenever I wasn't doing, the occasional little rewrite with Gus and actors, I would be helping Sydney like load a cube truck and like, wrap out. So that was awesome. And then just, the dream of, like I said, when I set out to write something in 2020 of like, okay, I want to get something made so I could see a bigger director, at the top of their game, bring it to life, and that's what I got. And I mean, I've been on a lot of sets. I've gone to like PA on a lot of different features and movies the past like decade or so, but I've never been with a director like Gus, who's so calm and collaborative.
When I was trying to reach you, like sometimes we needed to like write something that somebody suggested we write, and officially like get Austin to write it. And Veronica, our line producer, she would say, "Well, works at the zoo." Meaning like he was not available, I guess you guys don't have phones in the...
Well, I was a custodian at the zoo, and when I'm on the clock, I wasn't on my phone. So there'd be, it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's a lie.
Talking about your first screenplay.
I definitely listened to some podcasts while I was cleaning that zoo. The whole William Friedkin autobiography, if anyone has ever listened to that, it's so fun. He's such a salty dog. But yeah, there would be days, I think, during some of those ML rewrites where, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, in the mornings, I would be cleaning the zoo just to kind of pay rent. And it was a surreal thing where like I put my 3 weeks notice in at the zoo with my boss Robert, and I was like, I think the movie I wrote is going. I think they booked a ticket, so that's a good sign. And he was like, no shit, great. And I'd done a year there, so it was, I'd served my time. But then, it was a very surreal thing where like in January of this year, I was performing my last day on the job at the zoo, and then I packed my suitcase the next day, and then I'm flying to Louisville. I land immediately. We're on a scout with Tom, and Tom's our lead producer. Australian bloke was like, we gotta cut the ending. We gotta cut the whole ending. And I was like, all right. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be there to do those rewrites so that I could at least have some agency in it, because I know the realities of production. I know that sometimes a location will fall through. This actor's schedule means they have to shoot out in a certain amount of days. Like, I'm a team player, and I think I was ready to always do, hopefully, every note that Gus and well, mainly just Gus. I was pretty protective of the script, unless it was coming from Gus.
But there was, my neighbor in Palm Springs said that her friend was at a stadium game when Tony was announced, the verdict was announced, and that the whole stadium erupted in applause and cheers.
Yeah, the first draft had that Richard was not at the courthouse, that he was at the game with his courtside seats, and that when it was announced on the chyron at the game, you could hear some cheers from I think what I wrote was that like from the top of the nosebleeds, there's some good cheers. Right down next to Richard's a little quieter. So I missed that. Yeah, we couldn't afford to get a stadium, like a period-appropriate stadium on it. This was a true indie, very small budget. Gus shot this in 19 days.
19 days.
And I guess going back to what you said, what I learned, I don't know of another director that could have pulled that off. And how calm you were under pressure. I learned so much because it is easy at times, I think, on set as a director to like be told, oh, you can't have this thing or this thing's not happening as you planned it, and to throw like a hissy fit, like, why would you do this injustice to me? And you're like,
Freaking would just walk off. And the first day, which is basically the montage where it's the city of Indiana and Indianapolis, and buses and cars and people in the street, and it was snowing. It was record snow for that period of time. It was like a foot or something like that. And nobody wanted to bring their cars because there's salt on the roads, and so I was, facing like literally no cars.
yeah, the script is like, the city is alive, it's waking up, all the cops and the bus drivers, the ecosystem, the class system is working symbiotically, all these people are walking around, and Gus shows up on set and there's like 2 people. But you were like, okay, great, we'll shoot those 2 people.
Well, okay, so couple of things. So in December 12th, the movie opens in select cities, so here in LA for sure.
At the Grove, yeah. I saw Begonia last night for the second time. Pretty fun film. And the poster was up, and I got a photo next. I've never seen the poster like in real life, or like at a theater.
This is awesome.
So that was a cool feeling.
We're all living vicariously through you. So the movie's in select theaters December 12th, opens wide on January 9th. And now that you've seen the film, the best way to spread word about a movie, obviously, is to go on social media. So, Facebook, Instagram, if you still want to use X, knock yourself out. But please do spread the word about Dead Man's Wire. Thank you all so much. Happy holidays. Thanks, fellas.